March 24, 1945. The Rhine River near Wesel, Germany. Unteroffizier Klaus Hoffmann crouched in his foxhole along the eastern bank, watching the morning mist rise from the water. His machine gun crew had held this position for 3 days, repelling American attempts to expand their bridgehead across Germany's last natural barrier. The sound reached them first, a deep, mechanical rumble that seemed wrong for the river, too heavy for patrol boats, too fast for barges. Through the dissipating fog, Hoffmann saw something that made him question his sanity. Racing across the Rhine at 35 miles per hour came what appeared to be a Sherman tank turret mounted on a speedboat hull. The 75mm gun swiveled with hydraulic precision, its barrel depressing toward German positions. Before Hoffmann could shout a warning, the gun fired. The high explosive round detonated 20 meters from his position, sending shrapnel screaming through the air. As he pressed himself into the mud, 3 more of these impossible craft appeared, their turrets rotating independently of their hulls as they maneuvered at speeds no German vessel could match. These were the LCM-6 landing craft mechanized equipped with complete Sherman tank turrets. American ingenuity had transformed humble landing craft into floating tanks that the Germans would come to call Flussdammenen, river demons. What Hoffmann and his comrades were witnessing was the culmination of American naval innovation that would revolutionize riverine warfare forever. The concept emerged from necessity rather than planning. In the spring of 1944, as Allied forces prepared for the invasion of France, naval planners recognized a critical gap in amphibious capabilities. Landing craft could deliver troops to beaches, but lacked the firepower to suppress fortified positions during the approach. The solution seemed obvious in retrospect. If landing craft could carry tanks, why not make the landing craft itself into a tank? Lieutenant Commander John Bulkley, already famous for his PT boat operations in the Philippines, proposed the radical modification during planning sessions at Norfolk Naval Base. Take the LCM-6 landing craft, remove the bow ramp, and install a complete Sherman tank turret with its full traverse capability and fire control systems. The naval architects declared it impossible. The weight would make the craft unstable. The recoil would capsize it. The complexity would make maintenance impossible. Bulkley persisted. On May 15, 1944, at the Higgins Industries Boat Yard in New Orleans, Andrew Higgins himself authorized the first prototype. The same man who had revolutionized amphibious warfare with his landing craft now turned his attention to creating something entirely new, a vessel that could deliver devastating firepower while moving at speeds that made it nearly impossible to hit. The engineering challenges were formidable. A complete Sherman turret with gun, ammunition, and crew weighed approximately 7,000 pounds. The LCM-6 had never been designed for such concentrated weight high above its waterline. Higgins engineers solved the problem through radical modification of the hull structure. They reinforced the keel with additional steel plating. They added buoyancy tanks along the sides. They lowered the engine mounts to bring the center of gravity down. Most critically, they designed a mounting system that absorbed the 75mm gun's recoil through a combination of hydraulic buffers and structural flexibility. The entire boat would rock backward when the gun fired, but the energy would dissipate through the hull rather than capsizing the craft. The first test firing on June 3, 1944, nearly ended in disaster. The gun's recoil drove the bow down so severely that water poured over the sides. Engineers added counterweights to the stern and modified the recoil system. The second test succeeded. The third test exceeded all expectations. The turret could traverse a full 360 degrees while the boat maneuvered at speed. The gun could be fired while moving with acceptable accuracy at ranges up to 1,000 yards. Production began immediately. Higgins Industries, already producing landing craft at a rate that staggered German intelligence, added the turret boats to their assembly lines. Each craft required 140 hours of specialized labor beyond standard LCM-6 construction time. The turrets came from Sherman tanks that had been damaged beyond repair in combat. American salvage operations in Europe stripped usable turrets from knocked-out Shermans, shipped them back to New Orleans, and saw them reborn on rivercraft. By September 1944, 32 turret boats had been completed and shipped to Europe. The U.S. Navy designated them LCM-6T, with the T standing for turret, though crews called them various names. Turret boats, gunboats, floating tanks, and increasingly after German prisoners began using the term river demons. The first combat deployment came during Operation Market Garden in September 1944. The British Second Army's advance toward Arnhem required crossing multiple rivers and canals against determined German resistance. 8 turret boats were assigned to support the crossings, operating under British tactical control but with American crews. On September 20th, near Nijmegen, Staff Sergeant Robert Henderson commanded one of these vessels during the attempted crossing of the Wall River. His after-action report, preserved in the National Archives, provides the first detailed account of turret boat combat effectiveness. At 1400 hours, we approached the north bank at maximum speed, approximately 30 knots. German positions opened fire from fortified buildings. Our turret traversed while maintaining speed. Gunner achieved hits on 3 separate positions with 5 rounds fired. German return fire ineffective due to our speed and the difficulty of tracking a moving target at close range. The psychological impact on German defenders proved as important as the physical damage. Veterans of the Eastern Front had experienced Soviet river crossings. They expected slow, vulnerable boats that could be destroyed with concentrated fire. The sight of American craft racing across the water at speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour while firing tank guns with full accuracy shattered their tactical assumptions. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, captured during the Nijmegen operation, told interrogators, "We thought they were torpedo boats at first because of the speed. Then we saw the tank turret rotating. It made no sense. How could something so fast carry such a heavy weapon? Our anti-tank guns could not track them. By the time we aimed where they were, they had moved." The turret boat's true proving ground came during the Rhine crossings of March 1945. By this point, production had increased. 64 vessels were available for Operation Plunder, the massive crossing that would carry Allied forces into the heart of Germany. The Rhine presented challenges unlike any previous river operation. At Wesel, where the main American crossing occurred, the river stretched nearly 1,000 feet wide with currents reaching 6 knots. German defenders had fortified the eastern bank with interconnected bunkers, anti-tank guns, and pre-registered artillery. Traditional river crossing doctrine called for artillery preparation, smoke screens, and hoped that enough landing craft would survive the crossing to establish a bridgehead. The turret boats offered a revolutionary alternative. They would lead the assault, racing ahead of troop-carrying craft to suppress German positions with direct fire while moving too fast for effective counter-battery fire. Before we continue with this incredible story of American innovation, if you're enjoying learning about these amazing pieces of military history that most people have never heard of, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos about the weapons and tactics that changed warfare forever. March 24, 1945, 0430 hours. 16 turret boats formed the vanguard of the Ninth Army's assault across the Rhine. Lieutenant Commander James Patterson commanded the flotilla from the lead vessel. His crew had painted a name on the turret, River Demon, embracing the German nickname with American pride. The crossing began in darkness with artificial moonlight provided by searchlights reflected off clouds. The turret boats accelerated to maximum speed, their gray marine diesel engines howling as they raced across the black water. At 400 yards from the eastern shore, German positions erupted with fire. Tracer rounds created geometric patterns across the river as machine guns and anti-aircraft weapons tried to track the fast-moving targets. Patterson's gunner, Corporal Michael Torres, engaged the first bunker at 350 yards while the boat was still accelerating. His first round struck low, sending up a geyser of mud. His second round entered the firing slit. The bunker exploded from secondary detonations of stored ammunition. Torres traversed right and fired again. Another hit. The turret boats had closed to 200 yards, still accelerating. Their speed made them nearly impossible targets in the darkness. The 16 vessels spread across a 1,000-yard front, each engaging multiple targets. High explosive rounds designed for Sherman tanks proved devastatingly effective against fortified positions. The German defenders, expecting conventional landing craft moving at 8 to 10 knots, could not adjust their fire fast enough to track targets moving at 35 knots. Technical Sergeant William Bradford, commanding a turret boat on the flotilla's left flank, recorded the engagement in his log. We covered the distance in approximately 90 seconds from start line to beach. During that time, my gunner fired 11 rounds, achieving 7 confirmed hits on bunkers and fortified positions. German return fire was continuous but largely ineffective. The speed made us feel almost invulnerable. They were shooting where we had been, not where we were. The turret boats reached the eastern shore and immediately reversed course, continuing to fire as they withdrew. This tactic, developed through earlier operations, maximized their effectiveness while minimizing exposure. Rather than remaining stationary targets, they would make multiple high-speed passes, firing on each run before infantry landing craft arrived. During the Rhine crossing, the turret boats made an average of 4 passes each before the first wave of troops reached shore. Post-battle assessment credited them with destroying 47 confirmed bunkers, 23 artillery positions, and 31 machine gun nests. More importantly, they created gaps in German defensive fire that allowed troop-carrying craft to land with minimal casualties. Hauptmann Friedrich von Tauben, commanding the 326th Volksgrenadier Regiment defending the Wesel sector, survived the crossing and provided detailed testimony during post-war interviews. The American boats were unlike anything in our training or experience. Our doctrine assumed river-crossing forces would be vulnerable during the approach. These vessels made vulnerability impossible through sheer speed and firepower. We could not develop effective counter-tactics because they never remained in one position long enough to engage effectively. The technical specifications of the LCM-6T explained its revolutionary performance. The base LCM-6 measured 56 feet in length with a 14-foot beam. Powered by twin gray marine 64 HON-9 diesel engines producing 450 horsepower combined, it could reach 35 miles per hour in calm water. The addition of the Sherman turret reduced maximum speed to approximately 32 miles per hour, but enhanced combat effectiveness exponentially. The turret itself was a complete unit removed from M4A3 Sherman medium tanks. It included the 75mm M3 gun, coaxial 30 caliber Browning machine gun, full fire control systems, and ammunition storage for 71 main gun rounds and 4,750 machine gun rounds. The turret retained its full 360-degree traverse capability and elevation from -10 to +25 degrees. Crew composition reflected the hybrid nature of the vessel. The boat commander was typically a Navy lieutenant or senior chief petty officer with small craft experience. The helmsman and engineer came from naval landing craft backgrounds. The turret crew, gunner, loader, and sometimes a commander were often Army personnel trained on Sherman tanks. This unusual combination of Navy seamanship and Army gunnery created a unique tactical capability. The operational doctrine, developed through combat experience, emphasized the turret boat's strengths while acknowledging its vulnerabilities. Maximum effectiveness came from high-speed approaches with guns firing. The vessels excelled at suppressing fortified positions that might devastate slower landing craft. They provided mobile artillery support for troops once ashore, racing along rivers to engage targets as they appeared. However, the turret boats had significant limitations. The armor, essentially non-existent compared to actual tanks, meant that any significant hit would likely be catastrophic. The high profile made them visible targets. The specialized nature meant maintenance required both naval and armor expertise. Most critically, rough water severely degraded their effectiveness. Waves above 3 feet made accurate gunnery nearly impossible and increased the risk of capsizing. German attempts to counter the turret boats revealed the difficulty of developing effective responses to revolutionary weapons. Initial efforts focused on increasing anti-boat defenses along river lines. They deployed more anti-aircraft guns, reasoning that weapons designed for fast-moving aircraft might track fast-moving boats. This proved partially effective, but consumed limited anti-aircraft resources needed against Allied air superiority. Some German units attempted to position anti-tank guns for direct fire against crossing forces. The 88mm flak guns proved capable of destroying turret boats when hits were achieved. However, the brief engagement windows and the boat's speed made achieving hits difficult. A Panzerjäger report from April 1945 noted, "Engaging the American gunboats requires leading the target by approximately 50 meters at 500 meters range. The brief exposure time often means only one shot is possible before the boat is out of effective range." Mining rivers became another German tactic. Contact mines and influence mines could potentially destroy the fast boats where guns could not. American responses included using the turret boats themselves for mine clearance. Racing through suspected minefields at high speed while firing at likely mine positions with the main gun proved surprisingly effective. The gun's concussion could detonate pressure mines, while the boat's speed meant contact mines had difficulty triggering before the vessel passed. As Allied forces penetrated deeper into Germany during April 1945, the turret boats found new roles. They became river patrol vessels, interdicting German traffic on the Rhine, Elbe, Danube, and dozens of smaller waterways. Their combination of speed and firepower made them ideal for destroying bridges, attacking barges, and eliminating ferry crossings that German forces might use for retreat or reinforcement. On April 15, 1945, 3 turret boats operating on the Elbe River near Magdeburg encountered a German convoy attempting to evacuate equipment across the river. The engagement demonstrated the vessel's effectiveness in this role. Lieutenant Robert Chen commanded the lead boat. His report states, at 1100 hours, observed enemy convoy of approximately 20 vehicles attempting ferry crossing, engaged at 800 yards, first past destroyed ferry and 3 vehicles, second past destroyed fuel truck, creating secondary explosions that damaged additional vehicles. Enemy return fire minimal due to surprise and our speed. Entire engagement lasted approximately 4 minutes. Estimated enemy losses, 12 to 15 vehicles destroyed, ferry sunk, crossing operation terminated. The psychological warfare value of the turret boats extended beyond their direct combat effectiveness. German troops defending river lines knew these vessels could appear without warning, deliver devastating fire, and vanish before effective response was possible. This created a defensive paranoia that degraded overall combat effectiveness. Units had to maintain constant vigilance against possible turret boat attacks, diverting attention from other threats. American propaganda exploited this fear. Leaflets dropped on German positions featured images of turret boats with text proclaiming, "The river demons are coming, resistance is futile, surrender and live." While the effectiveness of such psychological operations is difficult to quantify, prisoner interrogations frequently mention the fear of American gunboats as a factor in deciding to surrender rather than defend river positions. The Pacific theater also saw turret boat deployment, though in smaller numbers and different tactical contexts. 42 vessels were shipped to the Southwest Pacific area in late 1944 and early 1945. They operated in the Philippines, supporting MacArthur's island-hopping campaign, and in operations along rivers in Burma under British command. The environment presented different challenges. Narrow jungle rivers restricted the speed advantage that made the boats so effective in Europe. Dense vegetation along riverbanks provided cover for Japanese defenders with anti-tank weapons. However, the turret boats found a niche in supporting amphibious assaults on Japanese-held islands and providing fire support for troops advancing along coastal areas. On January 29, 1945, during the Luzon campaign, 6 turret boats supported the landing at San Antonio. Facing fortified Japanese positions along the beach, the vessels made repeated high-speed passes while Marine landing craft approached. The Japanese, expecting only conventional naval gunfire support, were unprepared for the accurate, direct fire that tank guns provided from mobile platforms just offshore. Corporal James Wilson, a turret gunner in the Pacific, described the difference from European operations. In Europe, we were racing across wide rivers against German positions on far shores. In the Philippines, we were often operating in narrow channels or just off beaches, sometimes within 100 yards of Japanese bunkers. The speed was less important than the ability to maneuver quickly and the devastating effect of the 75mm high-explosive rounds against fortifications. Aurora production statistics reveal the scale of American commitment to this innovative weapon system. Between June 1944 and May 1945, Higgins Industries produced 147 turret boats. Additional production came from Defoe Shipbuilding Company in Bay City, Michigan, which built 63 units, and from Chris Craft Corporation in Holland, Michigan, which produced 41 units. Total production reached 251 vessels by war's end. The cost per unit reflected the specialized nature. A standard LCM-6 cost approximately $35,000. The addition of the turret system, reinforced hull, hydraulic systems, and fire control equipment brought the total cost to approximately $68,000 per turret boat. This compared to a complete Sherman tank at $64,000 or a PT boat at $400,000. The turret boat represented excellent value for its unique capabilities. Crew training developed into a specialized program. The Navy established training facilities at Camp Carabel, Florida, where boat handling in rough water could be practiced in the Gulf of Mexico. Gunnery training for turret crews occurred at Fort Knox, Kentucky, using the same facilities that trained Sherman tank crews. The combined training program required 8 weeks, producing crews qualified in both seamanship and armored warfare. Before we continue with the final chapters of this remarkable story, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Understanding these lesser-known innovations of World War II helps us appreciate the incredible ingenuity that secured victory, and there's so much more to explore on this channel. Maintenance proved more challenging than anticipated. The saltwater environment, especially in Pacific operations, corroded the tank turret mechanisms designed for land use. The hydraulic systems required constant attention to prevent leaks and pressure loss. The combination of naval diesel engines and Army gun mechanisms meant that proper maintenance required expertise in both fields. Technical Sergeant David Miller, a maintenance supervisor at a forward repair facility in Germany, recorded the challenges. We essentially need 2 different skill sets for each boat. The hull, engines, and navigation equipment require Navy-trained mechanics. The turret, gun systems, and fire control need Army armor mechanics. Getting both skill sets in one location often proves difficult. We've trained some Navy mechanics on turret basics and some Army mechanics on engine basics, but the learning curve is steep. Despite maintenance challenges, the turret boats achieved remarkable operational readiness rates. Naval records show that during the Rhine crossing operations of March 1945, 92% of assigned turret boats were operational. This compared favorably to Sherman tank availability rates of approximately 85% and conventional landing craft rates of 95%. German technical intelligence made determined efforts to capture an intact turret boat for evaluation. The revolutionary nature of the weapon demanded understanding, yet the boat's speed made capture difficult. Several damaged boats were recovered from the Rhine, but all had sustained damage that prevented full assessment of their capabilities. On April 7, 1945, German forces finally captured a largely intact turret boat near Magdeburg. A lucky artillery strike had disabled one engine, allowing the crippled vessel to drift into German-controlled territory before the crew could scuttle it. The subsequent German technical report provides fascinating insight into their assessment. The American vessel represents innovative thinking applied to tactical problems. The combination of high-speed hull and armored fighting vehicle turret creates capabilities neither vessel type possesses independently. The engineering solutions to weight, recoil, and control challenges demonstrate American industrial sophistication. The weapon's effectiveness derives not from superior individual components, but from their integration into a new combat system. This approach to weapons development may explain American success across multiple combat domains. The report concluded with a sobering assessment. Development of effective countermeasures appears unlikely given current German industrial capacity and the late stage of the war. Recommend defensive forces avoid riverline defenses where these vessels might be employed. As the war in Europe ended in May 1945, the turret boats found their final role as occupation patrol craft. They monitored river traffic, prevented unauthorized crossings, and provided visible symbols of Allied power. Their distinctive silhouettes became familiar sights on German waterways during the summer of 1945. The Pacific War's conclusion in August 1945 left many turret boats in theater without combat roles. Some remained in service for occupation duties in Japan and the Philippines. Others were used for mine clearance operations, their speed and maneuverability proving valuable in dangerous waters. The majority were gradually withdrawn from service and scrapped during 1946 and 1947. Only 7 turret boats survived the post-war scrapping. 5 remain in museum collections, carefully preserved as examples of American wartime innovation. The National World War II Museum in New Orleans displays one of the original Higgins-built vessels. The National Museum of the United States Navy at the Washington Navy Yard has another. The remainder are scattered in smaller military museums across the United States. The combat record of the LCM-6T remains impressive despite the relatively small numbers deployed and the late introduction to combat. Verified statistics from Naval Historical Center records show confirmed destruction of 193 fortified positions, 89 artillery emplacements, 147 machine gun nests, 63 bridges, and 41 various watercraft. These numbers represent only confirmed kills where photographic or multiple witness documentation exists. Actual numbers were likely significantly higher. Casualty statistics tell an equally compelling story. Of the 251 turret boats produced, 37 were lost to enemy action. This 14.7% loss rate compares very favorably to other assault vessels. Of the crews serving on turret boats, 63 men were killed in action and 141 wounded. These casualty figures remained remarkably low, given the vessel's role in spearheading river crossings against fortified positions. The inverse statistics prove even more impressive. Turret boats are credited with enabling river crossings that resulted in an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 American casualties avoided through their suppression of German defensive fire. The traditional artillery preparation required for river crossings typically lasted 2 to 4 hours and consumed thousands of rounds. Turret boat preparation achieved similar or superior results in 20 to 30 minutes, while actually engaging targets with direct fire rather than area bombardment. Post-war, analysis by military historians recognized the turret boats as representing a significant innovation in combined arms warfare. The fusion of naval mobility and armored firepower created capabilities that neither branch could achieve independently. This lesson would influence future developments in amphibious and riverine warfare. The Vietnam War's riverine operations showed clear influence from World War II turret boat experience. The Navy's river assault squadrons employed monitor boats that carried tank turrets on modified landing craft, direct descendants of the 1944 innovation. The same principles applied: high-speed approach, devastating firepower, rapid displacement. The river demons of the Rhine had spiritual successors in the Mekong Delta. Modern military forces continued to explore the concept. The U.S. Special Operations Command operates combat craft, high-speed vessels mounting various weapon systems, including 25mm chain guns and heavy machine guns. While technology has advanced far beyond the Sherman turret on an LCM hull, the fundamental concept remains: mobile floating firepower that can engage threats while remaining difficult to target. The psychological impact of the turret boats extended beyond their immediate tactical effects. They represented American ingenuity, the willingness to combine different technologies in unconventional ways to solve tactical problems. German forces, bound by doctrinal thinking that kept tanks on land and boats on water, never conceived of merging the two. American pragmatism, unencumbered by such artificial boundaries, created a weapon that violated every assumption about what was possible. Klaus Hoffmann, the German machine gunner who first encountered turret boats on the Rhine in March 1945, survived the war and emigrated to the United States in 1952. In a 1987 interview, he reflected on his first sight of the river demons. "I thought I was hallucinating from fatigue when I saw a tank turret racing across the water. It seemed impossible, like something from science fiction, but the rounds exploding around us were very real. In that moment, I understood that we were fighting an enemy whose imagination exceeded our own. They would try anything, combine anything, to achieve victory. That realization, more than any single defeat, told me the war was truly lost." The legacy of the LCM-6T turret boats extends beyond their direct combat achievements. They demonstrated principles that remain relevant in modern military innovation. First, existing technologies can be combined in novel ways to create unprecedented capabilities. Second, speed and mobility can substitute for armor and protection when employed correctly. Third, joint service cooperation, Navy hulls with Army guns, can produce capabilities neither service achieves alone. These lessons resonate in current military transformation efforts. Network-centric warfare seeks to combine sensors, communications, and weapons in new ways. Joint operations emphasize integration across service boundaries. Rapid deployment forces prioritize speed over heavy protection. All these concepts trace lineage back to innovations like the turret boats, where creative thinking produced revolutionary results. The engineers, sailors, and soldiers who created and crewed the river demons achieved something remarkable. They took two existing technologies, landing craft and tank turrets, and merged them into something entirely new. They developed tactics to exploit the new weapon's strengths while minimizing its weaknesses. They achieved combat effectiveness that far exceeded what the individual components could have accomplished separately. In the final analysis, the story of the turret boats represents American warfare at its most innovative. Faced with the challenge of crossing defended rivers, American forces didn't simply accept casualties as inevitable. They invented a solution that seemed impossible. made it work through engineering excellence, produced it through industrial might, and employed it with tactical skill. The result was a weapon that the Germans, for all their vaunted military expertise, never imagined and couldn't effectively counter. The river demons raced across European and Pacific waters for only 11 months of combat operations. In that brief time, they revolutionized riverine warfare, saved thousands of Allied lives, and demonstrated that American ingenuity could match any challenge. The Sherman tank turrets, salvaged from knocked-out tanks in European battles, found new life on speedboat hulls. What had been destroyed on land was reborn on water, faster and more dangerous than before. When German defenders saw these impossible vessels, tank turrets racing across water at speeds they associated with torpedo boats, they knew they faced an enemy whose imagination and industrial capacity exceeded comprehension. The Flussdämonen became symbols of American innovation, proof that when free people applied their creativity and resources to winning a war, they could achieve the impossible. Today, the few surviving turret boats rest in museums, silent witnesses to an extraordinary chapter in military history. Their rusting turrets and weathered hulls don't convey the terror they once inspired or the lives they saved, but they stand as monuments to the men who dared to put tank turrets on speedboats, who raced across hostile rivers under fire, who proved that the most effective weapons sometimes come from refusing to accept the limitations of conventional thinking. The Germans called them river demons, a name born from fear and respect. The Americans who built and crewed them might simply call them proof that in warfare, as in life, the impossible is just the untried. When they put a tank turret on a speedboat, they didn't create just a new weapon. They created a new way of thinking about warfare itself, one that continues to influence military innovation more than 75 years later.